Each week as you enter this timeless land, one of these many worlds will open to you. Frontierland. Tall tales and true from the legendary past. Tomorrowland. Promise of things to come. Adventureland. The wonder world of nature's own realm. Fantasyland, the happiest kingdom of them all. Presenting this week,
at Disneyland Park, the realm devoted to things of the future is called Tomorrowland. One of the popular attractions here is our simulated rocket trip around the moon. After entering the Disneyland spaceport, visitors may experience the thrills that space travelers of the future will encounter when rocket trips to the moon become a daily routine. However, scientists tell us that it will be many years before space travel becomes a reality. After consulting with the scientists, our artists and studio technicians have prepared a factual picture of how the coming conquest of the moon will be accomplished. Here to tell you about it is director Ward Kimball.
When we hear the exciting news of how the rocket scientists of today are preparing for tomorrow's trip to the moon, we must remember that such a trip has long been the dream of many men since history began. But before we consider the scientific plans for a trip to the moon, let us first show you, as sort of a prologue, the results of our research into the legends and facts and foibles, superstitions of man and the moon. Roll the moon sequence, please.
This is the moon. It shines over the great cities. It illuminates the countryside, and its reflection shimmers on lakes and oceans. This is the moon that saw life begin on Earth millions of years ago. As primeval man watched the moon in the night sky, it became to him an object of curiosity. In legend, he tells the story of an old man who, while digging, discovered a small shiny object. As he held it in his hands, it grew and grew, and finally escaped into the sky to become the moon. To primitive man, the moon was somewhat of a personality. Sometimes he saw in it the face of another man, or a woman. Some ancient aborigines thought they saw a four-eyed leopard. Perhaps the greatest mystery to our ancestors was the moon's strange ability to change its shape. The early Hindus believed that it was Chandrashka, the god of night, slowly turning his lamp as he moved across the sky. The Aegeans, on the other hand, thought the moon was a silver shield, reflecting the seas and mountains of the earth. Moon worship was an important part of many ancient religions. The Sumerians called the moon Nana, and the golden calf with crescent horns was a symbol of reverence. Here stands the Egyptian moon god Thoth, the reckoner of time. 12 times between the annual rise of the Nile, the moon grew to fullness. This gave Egypt one of the first lunar year calendars. And here is Diana, the Grecian moon goddess, whose beauty inspired the Romans to build a silver temple in her honor. To some primitive races, an eclipse was a mysterious and terrible thing to behold. They believed a giant serpent was devouring the sun's light, so they danced and made great noises to frighten the moon beast away. And he would go away. The first book devoted completely to the moon was a parchment by Plutarch. He said the moon was simply a smaller Earth, but unlike the Earth, its inhabitants were demons. These words of Plutarch inspired one Lucian of Samosata to record what was perhaps the first science fiction story. He tells of a very strange journey to the moon in 160 A.D. A ship went sailing on western seas through the Pillars of Hercules. She sailed through a realm as dark as night, pursuing her course of lunar flight. The Moon King held his hand aloft and cried to far and near, "Begone, ye earthling creatures bold, there are no women here." There followed upon the face of the earth a period called the Dark Ages. For centuries, the light of knowledge was extinguished, and only a fleeting mention of the moon was made. Moon. Then there was the great event of 1609. Galileo Galilei built a telescope and made the first close-up observations of the moon. He excitedly announced that he had observed the moon as another world, complete with mountains and seas. When the astronomer-mathematician Johannes Kepler heard of Galileo's startling observations, he immediately set to work on a book about the moon called Somnium, or Sleep. In this very imaginative account, Kepler goes to sleep during an eclipse and is kidnapped by moon demons. Because they cannot bear the light of the sun, they migrate to and from the earth, using the moon's shadow for a bridge. Here on the moon, Kepler wakes to see a fur-covered moon creature emerging during the cool of the evening. Amazing. Kepler's experience inspired the English bishop Francis Godwin to write a book called The Man in the Moon. His hero is a Spanish gentleman exiled on St. Helena, who escapes by building a contraption that harnesses the efforts of large swan-like birds. He realizes too late that these birds are of a rare type that migrate all the way to the moon. However, the trip is interesting, and he finds that the moon's inhabitants vary in size according to their rank. Their only language is music. A few years later, the flamboyant Cyrano de Bergerac makes comments on the possibility of traveling to the moon. His close friends scoff at the idea. This drives Cyrano to prove his point by writing a unique science fiction moon trip. His own personal device for getting to the moon is a string of bottles containing dew. Anyone knows that as the sun rises, so does the morning dew, and so does Cyrano. His scheme works so well that he has to discard some of the dew bottles for fear of overshooting his mark. But alas, he drops one too many, misses the moon, and lands in Canada. The natives are very hostile. He has to escape. What to do? Build a rocket, of course. This time, he is more successful. When his fuel supply gives out, the moon's gravity helps him make a triumphant lunar landing. In 1835, a sensational news report appeared in the New York Sun. Sir John Herschel, noted astronomer, had discovered life on the moon. The account stated that Sir John, aided by a powerful new telescope, was able to study the moon from a distance of 50 feet. He observed fantastic rock formations, strange plants, and hairy man-like creatures with bat wings who walked about in a dignified manner. There were animals, too, grazing bison and one-horned unigoats who were very playful. However, this whole story was the imaginative product of an overzealous reporter. It was a complete hoax, a moon hoax. Here we see the leading characters in Jules Verne's Victorian trip around the moon. 3 adventurers are given a fraternal send-off by the brothers of the Baltimore Gun Club. After a very hazardous trip, the daring spacemen are given a hearty reception by the brothers of the Baltimore Gun Club. Frequent reference to the moon is made in great literature. Shakespearean societies have long delighted in such lunar lyrics as Romeo, "Arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moon," Juliet, Oh, swear not by the moon, the inconstant moon that monthly changes in her circled orb. Othello, it is the very era of the moon. She comes more nearer earth than she was wont, and makes men mad. The moon is the source of many odd beliefs and superstitions. One of the oldest sayings is that the moon is made of green cheese, or that it is the resting place for all articles lost on Earth. It is said, if a man sees a new moon through a window, misfortune will befall him. Or if he cuts his hair under a new moon, it will grow back too fast. A secret wish made to a new moon will come true. But it is unlucky to see the new moon over the right shoulder. A new moon is the time to begin things. This is a good time to get married, to build a house, and move into it. Caesar once said that the dark of the moon is the best time to start a battle. When the moon is on the wane, stuff your feather bed. Wash your linen, mow your grass, cut your timber. Some farmers believe that the moon governs the planting of crops. They say that root-type crops should be planted during the dark of the moon, while the light of the full moon is the best time to plant the crops that grow above the ground. Also, medicines and tonics are said to be more efficient if taken during the full moon. In autumn, the full moon is the harvest moon. If the moon is a silver shield, be not afraid to reap your fields. But if she rises haloed round, soon we'll tread on deluged ground. Pale moon doth rain, red moon doth blow, white moon doth neither rain nor snow. It has been said that money exposed to the dark of the moon will increase as the moon becomes full. Some even believe that the left hind foot of a rabbit procured in a graveyard during the dark of the moon will bring good luck. We are warned that sleeping in the lunar light will produce lunacy. From this supposition evolved such expressions as loony, lunatic, moonsick, moon mad, and moonstruck. Little children love nursery rhymes, particularly verses about the moon.
The man in the moon came down too soon and asked his way to Morridge. He went to the south and burned his mouth to suffering cold peach porridge. Hey, diddle, diddle, the cat in the field. The cow jumped over the moon. The little dog laughed to see such sport, and the beast ran away with the squirrel. I see the moon, and the moon sees me. God bless the moon, and God bless me.
The moon is the symbol of love and romance. It has long been the inspiration for love songs the world over. It is very simple to write a moon song. First, of course, you must have the moon, preferably in the month of June. Someone to croon, and someone to write the tune. Add the word spoon, some flowers in bloom, and maybe even a honeymoon. Hit it, boys.
I see the moon shining down on lovers, spooning in the gloom. I see the moon on a sandy dune by a blue lagoon. All the hollyhocks in bloom fill the air with sweet perfume. Soon, pretty soon, love will bloom and you will croon. I see the moon that shines in June like a macaroon. I see the moon, we will sing it soon, rhyme it all with moon. Soon, spoon, June and moon, there'll always be a honeymoon. Honey, 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 moon, moon, moon. I see the moon that shines in June like a macaroon. I see the moon, we will sing a tune, rhyme it all with moon. Soon, spoon, June and moon, there'll always be a honeymoon. There'll always be a honeymoon.
Honey, honey, honeymoon, with Daniel Boone.
There'll always be a honeymoon.
This, then, is the moon. Like a flower in heaven's high bower, with silent delight, sits and smiles on the night.
Astronomers tell us that the Earth we live on and the moon we see in the sky are but tiny specks in a tremendous universe that contains billions upon billions of stars and other worlds. Now, one of these tiny little specks, or stars, is our own sun. And circling around the sun is a system of 9 major planets. Except for Mercury and Venus, all of the planets have 1 or more moons. The giant Jupiter has 12, Saturn 9, Mars 2, and of course our Earth only 1. How the Earth and moon came to be is a mystery. Astronomers speculate that about 4 billion years ago, our own universe was once a tremendous swirling cloud of cosmic gases and dust. Within this great nebula, smaller whirlpools of gaseous matter formed. These eddies of dust and hot gases gradually condensed to form our sun and planets. It is believed that at this early stage, the Earth and moon evolved, with the moon finally cooling to become a small, barren satellite 2,000 miles in diameter and circling the Earth once a month at a distance of 240,000 miles. Because the sun lights only half of the circling moon, the moon seems to gradually change shape during its monthly trip around the Earth. When the moon moves between the Earth and the sun, we see nothing but the dark shadow side. This is called the new moon. Each night, as the moon progresses along its circular path, we see slightly more of the lighted half. When it reaches a point on the opposite side of the Earth from the sun, it appears to us as a full moon. Then, as the moon continues its journey, we begin to see less and less of the illuminated half until finally it completes its monthly trip and becomes a new moon once again. Sometimes the circular path of the moon carries it through the shadow of the Earth, and we observe the weird effect known as an eclipse of the moon. On other rare occasions, during daylight hours, the invisible moon passes squarely between the Earth and the sun, and we are treated to the spectacle of a solar eclipse. Evidence of the moon's influence on our daily lives is here demonstrated. The gravitational pull the moon exerts on the oceans of our Earth causes daily high and low tides around the world. These various movements of our moon through the sky have been observed and predicted for centuries. Today, with the help of modern telescopes and cameras, we are able to get a close-up view of the very unusual details on the moon's surface. The prominent dark areas we see even without a telescope are large, flat plains surrounded by mountain ranges and craters. Some of the rugged mountain peaks rise straight up to 35,000 feet. And the craters range in size from small potholes to giant openings measuring 146 miles across. Scientists attribute the moon's rather rough surface to either volcanic action or to explosive hits by meteorites when the moon was in a molten stage. We've never seen the other side of the moon, but experts agree that it probably looks much like the side which always faces us. The moon is a dead world without atmosphere, a silent, unchanging desert where temperatures drop to 250 degrees below zero on the shadow side and boil at over 200 degrees in the direct light of the sun. But uninviting as it seems to be, man's restless search for knowledge of the universe will certainly make the moon one of his first objectives in the exploration of space. Here to reveal a plan for a trip around the moon is the chief of the guided missile development at the United States Army's Redstone Arsenal, Dr. Wernher Von Braun.
A voyage around the moon must be made in 2 phases. A rocket ship taking off from the Earth's surface will use almost all the fuel it can carry just to attain a speed great enough to balance the pull of gravity. Unpowered, it will then keep circling the Earth in an orbit outside of the atmosphere. This is the first phase. However, if we can refuel the ship in this orbit with fuel brought up by cargo rocket ships, it can set out on the second phase, the trip around the moon and back. To facilitate this refueling operation, we will establish an advanced base in the orbit, 1,000 miles above the Earth. This advanced base, or space station, will be headquarters for the final ascent to the moon. Our space satellite will have the shape of a wheel, measuring 200 feet across. Its outside rim will contain living and working quarters for a crew of 50 men. Just below the radio and radar antenna is the atomic reactor. Its heat will be used to drive a turbo generator, which supplies the station with electricity. Access to the station will be through an airlock in the hub. The 3 large spokes are elevator shafts, and the small pipes are used as condensers for the turbo generator and the air conditioning plant. The entire wheel will slowly rotate at 3 revolutions per minute. The resulting centrifugal force will produce an artificial gravity for the men in the rim. Notice that the floors are placed so that the men stand with their heads toward the hub. The wheel is divided into 9 sections. The first section is headquarters and communications. The next section will be for Earth weather observation and prediction. Military reconnaissance experts, aided by powerful optical and radar telescopes, will observe every point on the globe as the space station makes its complete trip around the Earth every 2 hours. Next is the emergency hospital section, and then the astronomy division, where men will keep an eye on the rocket ship as it makes its trip around the moon. The rest of the space station will house calculating machines, maintenance facilities, air conditioning equipment, living quarters, and even a botanical and zoological laboratory. This entire space station will have to be prefabricated and tested on the ground. After dismantling, it will be transported in pieces up to the orbit. For the difficult job of reassembling the structure, we have provided a new type of spacesuit. Using gyros and 2 small rocket motors, the operator can tilt and move in any direction. Located outside will be 7 remotely controlled mechanical arms, each a specialized tool. By rotating himself within the spacesuit, the operator can use any of the arms for the variety of tasks in assembling the space station. When the day arrives for construction to begin, the thousands of parts for the space station will be transported to the orbit by our multi-stage rockets. We merely replace the winged passenger section with a simple cargo carrying nose. These cargo ships will be unmanned. A passenger rocket, 1,075 miles above the Earth, will guide each of the 12 approaching cargo rockets to their rendezvous in the orbit. This ship, which circles the Earth every 2 hours, will be the command post until after the space station is finished. On the ground, the first of the cargo rockets is ready for takeoff. When the guide ship reaches the correct position in the orbit, the cargo rocket is fired. While its motors are firing, the cargo rocket is controlled by an automatic pilot, like a guided missile. Up in space, the blast-off is observed with the aid of optical instruments. In the guide ship, the navigator locks his tracking radar on the rising cargo rocket. At about 24 miles altitude, the first stage breaks away and the second stage motors fire. 2 minutes later, the cargo head blasts away from the second stage and continues firing until its speed reaches 18,468 miles per hour. Automatically, the motor cuts off. Now, with the aid of remote controls, the navigator rotates the rising cargo rocket so that when it arrives later in the orbit, it will line up with the guide ship. Here, at 1,075 miles up, follows the most precise maneuver of the entire operation. The motor of the cargo rocket is fired again until its speed and course exactly match that of the guide ship. Radar remote control will enable this maneuver to be performed with a high degree of accuracy. 56 minutes have now elapsed since takeoff. The cargo ship is floating in space, 2,000 feet ahead of the guide ship. 2 crew members make their way to the cargo head to begin the unloading operation. First, the motor and tanks are detached. Then 2 bottle-type construction suits are removed from the hull. When fitted in the airlock, each of these construction suits will receive an operator. The sections of the cargo ship are moved back to make way for other supply rockets soon to arrive. Construction of the space wheel now begins. The sides of the cargo nose are mechanically separated. Built-in tanks of compressed air inflate this large plastic inner section of the hub. Thin metal plates are immediately clamped on the outside to protect it from meteors. The first workday in space draws to a close. Every 24 hours, another cargo rocket will arrive in the orbit. When the airlock is attached, the pressurized hub section can be used as temporary quarters for eating and sleeping. Each succeeding load is carefully scheduled so that the parts of the station can be assembled in correct order. Nylon ropes prevent the parts from slowly drifting away. Next, the atomic reactor is installed. The wheel begins to take shape now as the 3 main spokes and rim sections are joined together. Condenser pipes are fitted next, so that the atomic reactor may be put in operation. Even though there's no apparent motion, everything in the orbit is hurtling around the Earth at 16,000 miles per hour. The shell of the station is completed. Now comes the delicate task of installing instruments and the multitude of equipment inside. Finally, 2 small rocket motors on the rim, blasting for a few seconds, will set the wheel in permanent motion to revolve 3 times a minute. As life on the station settles down to routine, the large reflecting telescopes will begin their work. These giant eyes relay pictures to television screens inside the station. One telescope photographs the surface of the Earth. Another keeps a constant watch on the Earth's weather, while the third is trained on our next objective, the moon. The primary purpose of the first moon trip will be to test the methods and equipment to be used on later voyages into deep space. It will be essentially a scouting trip around the moon, and no landing will be attempted. To understand the plan of the trip, let us use this model. Here is the Earth with the moon circling around it. Since the first half of the trip will take 5 days, we must aim the ship well ahead of the moon so that they both arrive at about the same point in space at the same time. Here we have a scale drawing of the Earth with the moon 240,000 miles away. This is the elliptical path which our rocket ship will follow, going out, and coming back. For the rocket to leave the orbit of the space station, its speed will have to be increased by firing the rocket for a brief period of 10 minutes. The ship will then coast for 5 days. The Earth's gravity begins to slow the rocket down until 121 hours later, at a point within 60 miles of the moon's surface, it will begin to fall back toward the Earth. Gradually picking up speed, it will take another 5 days to coast back to the space station. This model will show you how our future moon rocket ship might be designed. It will be 53 feet in length, has no wings or tail surfaces, because it will be assembled and operated only in the vacuum of space. For the hull of the ship, we are adapting the cabin section of one of the Earth to Space Station passenger rockets. To the nose, we have added a small atomic reactor, which will drive a steam turbine and furnish electricity for the ship's instruments. This shield will protect the crew members from dangerous radiation. The ship's crew of 4 men will be placed 2 in the front and 2 back here. This is the directional radio radar antenna. Located underneath is the airlock for a spacesuit. The suit can be entered from inside the ship. Clustered around the rear of the ship are the 7 extra fuel tanks filled with hydrazine and nitric acid. All but the centrally located tank will be released when empty near the end of the return trip to cut down on dead weight. Even though we now have the theoretical knowledge to make a trip to the moon, it will be many years yet before our plans can fully materialize. However, let us imagine for a moment that the many problems have been solved and that after completing our space station, we are ready to begin our first voyage around the moon.
Ladies and gentlemen, through a worldwide network of radio and television, we are bringing you an on-the-spot account of the first expedition around the moon. Here at Space Station number 1, 1,000 miles above the Earth, the final preparations have all been made. Except for the time the rocket is on the other side of the moon, our radio and that of the station will be in constant communication with the ship during the 10-day voyage. As the moon ship stands by, the all-important pressurized spacesuit enters the rocket's airlock for the last time. During the trip, it'll be used only in the case of emergency. The captain is the last man to come aboard. He will direct the entire expedition from his position at the front of the ship. The navigator, with his specialized instruments, is responsible for plotting the unmarked path through space. The radio operator must maintain constant communication with the Earth on the space station. Finally, the rocket ship's motor and other mechanical functions will be the responsibility of the engineer. After final instrument check, the ship's crew lock themselves in position for the blastoff. Now, only minutes remain until firing time. The captain sets the automatic firing timer and reports to the space station.
RM1 to Station 1, firing timer is engaged. We will begin power maneuver for departure in exactly 16 hours, 23 minutes, 47 seconds.
Roger, RM1, 16 hours, 23 minutes, 47 seconds, over.
Crew will secure and stand by for firing in 8-4 seconds. Acknowledge. Navigator, check. Radio okay. Engineer, check. me a Form 27-1 report. Over.
Engineer to captain. Motor pressure 447 psi, 3 low. Turbo pump 11,000 RPM, right on the button. Actuators steady. Guidance readings okay. Cabin pressure 0.3 psi low. Cabin temperature 72 degrees. Over.
This is Station 1 calling RM1. Our radar telescopes have charted your firing time and course. Give us a voice report for instrument error check. Over.
Well, we're on our way. Joe, how about another report?
Our firing time was 10 minutes, 0.35 seconds. Cutoff velocity, 21,888 miles per hour. Cutoff altitude, 1,765.2 miles. 1.6 low.
Okay. Now let's double check that star tracker with an optical and radar fix.
Right.
Captain, position check shows 0.7 miles below, 1.2 miles left, and 0.3 miles ahead of standard flight path. We have only a 0.03% error in azimuth reading.
Sounds good. Bill, let's transmit all your tape reports to the station.
Gentlemen, we are interrupting our program to give you the following message. Moonship RM1, which left the space station a little over 51 hours ago, reports a distance of 169,000 miles from the Earth. The ship is traveling at 9,400 miles per hour, and deviations from the intended flight path have been so small that the captain reports no corrective power maneuver has been necessary as yet. We are happy to report all the crew are in good condition.
Check the console, Joe. Try to pick it up. Bill, is your electrical system working?
Emergency condition. Repeat. Verify. Over.
Meteor hit, number 2 nitric acid tank. Pressure's dropping fast.
It's number 2, all right. Joe, put the air blowers on emergency power. Frank, get in the bottle chute and patch that hole. Don't use your motors near that leak. Try to reach it with the gripping arm.
Station 1 to RM1. Station 1 to RM1. Our instruments indicate emergency condition. Verify. Repeat. Verify. Over.
RM1 calling Station 1.
This is Station 1. Go ahead.
At 51 hours, 22 minutes elapsed flight time, registered hit by a small meteor. Puncture between Station 51 and 52, upper bulkhead of nitric acid tank number 2. Repairs are underway. RM1 to Station 1.
This is Station 1. Go ahead.
Meteor puncture sealed. Estimated diameter of meteor, 1/16 of an inch. No injuries, equipment okay. Estimated loss, 180 gallons of nitric acid. Proceeding on flight plan. Over and out. Station 1, this is RM1. At 110 hours, we are beginning measurements at rim of the moon for accurate position fixes. We are now picking up the unknown side of the moon. Bill, give me an altitude reading.
Okay.
Radio altimeter reads 22,886 miles from the moon's surface.
Oh, we're moving in fast. Frank, have you got anything in that star occultation reading yet?
Just a moment, I'll run it through the computer. Captain, we're approaching the moon on ellipse 29. Course indicates collision with moon at 1:20 hours 56 minutes. Correction tape 340 must be used at 1:16 hours.
As the 116th hour approaches, the navigator must act quickly to avoid a collision with the moon. He starts the tape selector, which will automatically correct the rocket's course by firing the motors for a precise number of seconds.
RM1 to Station 1. At 116 hours, conducting power maneuver on correction tape 340. Out.
Captain, we're almost on the button. We'll pass the moon's surface at 63 miles instead of 60.
Close enough. We'll make the correction on our return maneuver. Joe, set the spatial attitude control to keep us lined up with the flight path tangent. Stand by for observation schedule 17.
Station 1 to RM1. We acknowledge observation schedule 17. Checklist as follows. Green filter 93-B on electronic camera on upper astrodome. Use magnetic color tape on station 3, lower astrodome. Run 180-degree graph through contour mapper. Over.
The next few hours will constitute the most important phase of the trip. The moon is sweeping past the ship at great speed, and in the brief span of about 3 hours, all close-up observations of its unknown surface must be completed.
RM1, Station 1. We are now seeing the Earth disappear behind the moon's rim. This will be our last radio message until you see us on the other side.
Roger, RM1. Good luck.
I see what looks like a tremendous crater ahead. Bill, what does the contour mapper indicate?
Depth of crater is beyond range of contour mapper.
We'll reach the day and night terminator in 5 minutes. Frank, arm your flares and stand by to fire when I give the signal. Okay, Frank. Fire your flares at 3-minute intervals.
Captain, I'm getting a high Geiger count at 33 degrees.
My scintillation counter indicates a high degree of radioactivity on the same bearing.
Contour mapper shows a very unusual formation at about 15 degrees southern latitude and meridian 210.
Get some flares in that area, quick. RM1 to Station 1, do you read us? Over.
Roger, RM1, we read you weak but clear. Over.
At 123 hours, we are observing the Earth emerging from behind the moon. We will leave moon shadow at 124 hours, 14 minutes. Our ETA in orbit is 241 hours, 27 minutes.
After 3 hours of total darkness, the ship breaks from the moon shadow into the glaring sunlight to continue on its 5-day return trip. The irresistible power of the Earth's gravity has now changed the rocket's direction and is pulling it with ever-increasing speed back to the space station.
Frank, start the gyro attitude control for the braking maneuver and give me a time set for firing. Check.
At 240 hours, preparations are being made to enter the orbit of the space station. The ship's direction is reversed so that the subsequent firing will slow the rocket's speed and jettison the empty fuel tanks.
Okay for firing. Guidance tape 264 inserted. Set firing timer for 241 hours, 49 minutes, 11 seconds.
Okay. Joe, set the tank release and report.
Fuel tank set for release.
Firing timer set. Stand by for power maneuver in 35 seconds.
Ladies and gentlemen, you have just witnessed the first successful voyage into interplanetary space. This pioneer trip around the moon will soon be followed by an expedition which will actually land on the moon's surface. Even now, construction is going forward on the atomic-powered rocket ship that will challenge the limitless depths of space and solve the mystery of the red planet Mars.
Next week, our show will come to you from Fantasyland, when we will present our version of Charles Major's romantic novel, When Knighthood Was in Flower. Here now are a few highlights from that show.
Next week, from Fantasyland, Walt Disney invites you to witness the supreme spectacle of a fabulous era burst into life. It's an authentic chapter from the adventure-filled annals of history, When Knighthood Was in Flower, starring Glynis Johns as the beautiful Mary Tudor, and Richard Todd as Charles Brandon, a soldier of fortune. Meet James Robertson Justice, whose portrayal of the swashbuckling Henry VIII explodes on the screen in one of the century's most memorable performances.
I command you! You hear?
Yes, brother dear.
Are you coming?
No, brother dear.
Michael Gough as the treacherous Buckingham, England's deadliest swordsman. Witness one of the greatest love stories ever told, a romance that rocked both England and France when a commoner is forced to make love to a princess by her royal command.
By royal command?
And sovereign decree. Help me, Charles.
My lady, I beg of you.
Am I a statue on a pedestal?
Zoom back through centuries of time to see a rough and ready wrestling match between Charles Brandon and the Duke of Buckingham. Be it the Princess Ball, when the scandalous La Volta dance shocks the Queen and is the King's delight. See Henry VIII in the role of huckster and haggler as he craftily tries to sell his sister to the King of France.
How much English gold does he want to sweeten the bargain?
500,000 crowns has been proposed.
500,000? Odds death, why doesn't that old usurer ask me to melt down my crown?
Be on hand when Mary seeks to escape to America to avoid becoming the Queen of France.
Are you alone, my lady?
I've run away.
You must be mad. A princess cannot run away. How many hours of grace do you think you'll have before the king's officers catch up with you?
No one saw me leave, not even Lady Margaret. And long before I can be apprehended, you and I will be on our way to the New World.
Here is all the pomp and pageantry that makes history books come alive. A factual story 3 years in the making. The golden age of chivalry lives again next week when Walt Disney presents When Knighthood Was in Flower. A new motion picture of rare enchantment will soon be showing in your favorite theater. It is Walt Disney's The Littlest Outlaw. It's a story of courage, of adventure, a story of unusual charm. It's Walt Disney's The Littlest Outlaw. Feature length, Technicolor, soon. This has been an ABC Television Network film presentation.